Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our webinar organized in between the School of Architecture of Tianjin University and the Regional and Urban Planner Society of Nepal and the Polytechnic of Turin. The topic of today it is toward achieving sustainable development goals, sustainable solution for cities. The webinar it is organized in 3 sessions. Divided in between the 3 different institutions. The session 8 is concerning the Nepal context, and we have the speech of Professor Sanjaya Upreti entitled Smart City Planning for Sustainable Urban Development in Nepal. Then we have the question and answer session. Then we have the session B, the Chinese context. The first speech is the Dean of International Affairs of School of Architecture, Professor Zeng Peng, with a presentation entitled Rural Spatial Networking and Revitalization Path in Beijing, Tianjin, and the Hebei region. The speech number 2 is from myself. I am Paolo Vincenzo Genovese. And the title is Eco-District, Eco-Life, Theory and Practice of a Feasible Strategy for the Future of Urbanization. Then again, question and answer session. Then we have the third session organized by the Polytechnic of Turin. The first speech it is from Professor Roberto Giordano with the presentation entitled Nature-Based Solution, Action for Architecture's Challenge. Then, in order to conclude our interesting webinar, we have Lorenzo Savio with Slow Landscape, Vernacular Architecture Refurbishment in Rural Development Programs, and then again, question and answer session. This is the very interesting situation for all of us, so very welcome to our webinar. Let's start.
So I invite Professor Upreti. He is the first panelist in the session A, and his topic will talk about smart city planning for sustainable urban development in Nepal. Thank you very much, Professor Upreti. You have it is your turn. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Professor Paolo. I'm also given the task to introduce myself. So I'm Sanjay Upreti. I'm an architect by profession. Did my master's in urban planning and did my PhD in multicultural urbanism. I've been working in planning fields for past 20 years. I'm into academics as well as I'm into practice also. So I've been involved in few, some important plans, urban plans, and I've been involved in working on some policy documents like Habitat 3 National Country Report for this SDG 11. So I will not go beyond that, and I would want to start my presentation. Let me just make it a full view here. Okay. So today I would want to discuss about, I have 15 minutes, I'll try to stick to the time. My topic is smart city planning for sustainable urban development in Nepal. And before actually moving on to, sustainable development plan, how did it emerge in Nepali context? I would just want to talk briefly about, the emergence of different planning system in Nepal. So let me start with a very basic question here. How smart city planning is different from the many planning approaches used to plan cities in Nepal? To answer this question, we need to reflect on the planning practice since the 50s. If you look at the slide, the post-50s planning practice in Nepal has kind of, closely followed the international practice. That included a rational and comprehensive planning approach up until the early, let's say, 70s. And when nations were becoming urbanized more than ever globally, and the planning discourse increasingly taking an environmental turn around the 70s, one can see in this in the slide Nepal too turning to participatory urban development planning in 80s with concerns for environmental issues. And with the restoration of multi-party democracy in 1990s, followed by rapid urbanization and market-led liberal economic policies, various planning approaches were used with limited outcomes to create efficient, sustainable land use plans, to provide and improve the efficiency of basic urban services, and also to develop an, let's say, efficient institutional capacity of the local governments. Uh, as a result, if you look at the slide from 2000 onwards, smart city planning has been viewed and advocated by planners, politicians, and also policymakers as a buzzword and a quick fix solution to urban problems and challenges. The fascination with this concept can be understandable. I mean, it is understandable, among the policy and decision makers. It comes from the rapid technological advancement in the ICT sector and its overwhelming use in the day-to-day life. But such a notion largely, leaves out the pressing issues of sustainability the urban development sector is facing. In this sense, there is a need to understand how the sustainable urban development concept is linked with the smart city planning. And for this, we need to look at the concept of smart city and how this is linked with, sustainability, and how use of ICT can actually, achieve sustainable development goals. So, the concept of smart city development, if you look at it, uh, in literature, a smart city is said to have three major dimensions of development. It's a technology, people, and the community. And a smart city is supposed to make the maximum benefits of ICT technology in the development of safe and efficient physical infrastructure to emerge the city as an intelligent city. And also it is a city that has a people who could make uh, informed decisions, um, for efficient functioning, and also making it a knowledge city. Similarly, you know, it is a city of smart communities where shared interest and networking can happen because of ICT, availability. So based on such a concept, smart city planning looked into the possibility by ICT to develop efficient cities. Accordingly, huge investments were made to develop cities, but it was later realized the efficient urban management can only be achieved when the urban system is based on the sustainable use and its resources. So sustainability in this sense is a concept. The Bertland Commission's famous, statement: development that meets the need of the present without compromising the needs of the future generations to meet their own needs. So it argues for a system model that is characteristic of balance between environmental, social, and economic development pursuits a country has. So in the context of developing cities like Nepal, where effective urban governance is an issue, institution development has been added as a fourth important dimension. The question of how to create a balance between these four dimensions to achieve human development goals is often asked when it comes to managing cities. Uh, so, so in this context, smart city can be, this definition can be taken for smart city, and you can see the sustainable development and how smart applications can actually contribute to making cities sustainable. So let us just discuss how Europe and other countries have actually approached smart city development. So in this context, if you look at it, you'll find that if you make an analysis of this percentage of smart technology indicators used in various smart city series against the sustainable development indicators, you will see in Europe there is a overload of sustainable development indicators in city planning than that of smart technology indicators. It's just in Europe you'll see it's 10% the smart technology indicators, whereas 90% is the sustainable development indicators. So this also shows the importance of integrating sustainable development concept in city planning, and how ICT can be integrated to kind of like create a smart city there. So So with that note, you see, there are, the pillars of smart city that have been argued. If you juxtapose it with, 4 pillars of sustainability and the cases in India, and also the, definitions given by the International Telecommunication Union, you'll find that, you will find a close match between the pillars, except for environment and physical in, sustainable indicators and Indian case. So it's a physical environment friendly physical development, as you can argue. So if you look at in Nepalese case, you'll find that Nepal also has prepared this smart national smart city indicators with 4 pillars: smart governance, smart people, smart infrastructure, smart economy. It is all focused more on sustainable development indicators. And there are like main number of indicators that have been worked out. So indicators like this have been worked out in Nepali context to plan and design for smart city planning. And if you see in Nepalese context, you'll see, Nepal has these, 6 metropolitan cities, 11 sub-metropolitan cities, 276 municipalities, over 63% of the people living in urban areas now. And if you look at, interestingly, if you look at the kind of, number of our designated urban areas, about 269 designated urban areas has density below 25 persons per hectare. So it is a sprawl development. It is more of a rural character that you have in our cities. And you'll see government has started, smart city development. They started piloting 3 smart city development. And fortunately, I was lucky enough to work as a team leader for Lumbini Smart City Planning, one of the pilot project. And they are like, going for 13 more smart city plannings. And all of this planning, these municipalities, again, if you go and take, density as one important, you'll find a very, very low density development, a very low density development, a sprawl kind of development happening, indicating more rural character, abundance of, agricultural land available. And there are, there are emerging issues. For example, rural setting, it has a rural setting, density sprawl, migration to big towns, inefficient mobility planning, service daily problems exist, rural character, and need for. So there are multiple problems, but these problems can be taken as a prospects for smart city concept if you actually use ICT, integrate ICT in the development here. So I will just like in few slides I'll just go by what we did in Lumbini's case to integrate sustainability, ICT, and smart city concept. So this is the definition that is worked out in Nepali context here: sustainable and innovative, high quality, effective and efficient services, optimum use of technology using ICT as a tool, not as a not as an end. So if you look at the Lumbini is famous. It's a world. It has a World Heritage Site. It's a famous, birthplace of Lord Buddha. So if you look at it, it borders Indian town, and it is very low density development. We have like around 100 to 12 square kilometer of the area, 80,000 population roughly, and 1.5 million tourists visiting every year to Lumbini. And it has a multicultural, population composition. So it has like certain characteristics there. Look at this. Every year, I mean, Lumbini is an important pilgrimage for 350 million Buddhist tourists that are there. And if you see, when you project this particular population of 80,000 for next 50 years, you'll find that around 7 lakhs population will reach in 2068. Similarly, the floating population of tourists will reach to, almost 7 million per year in 2068. And we worked out, the transportation system and the projection of transportation system for next 20 years. And we found that, greenhouse emission is almost like 14,523 tons. So there is a, share of energy in residential sector is around 85%. You can see, I'm just trying to give you some snapshot here. And look at this particular place. This particular place is located in very hot, humid climate. The humidity throughout the year remains like, above 85 to 90%. So it's a very hot and humid climate. So there's a precipitation, there's a whole, climatic kind of character this particular place has. And if you look at the wind, it's very important for Lumbini, for the, this humid situations. And there is a, it has a lot of solar hours available to you, and there is a certain, orientation that you could see. is fitting. So what I'm today, trying to focus on, because it is a huge work that we've done. I'm just trying to look at some energy efficient approach to land use planning, urban form and regulations as a part of, sustainable development goal number 7, how it is integrated with sustainable development goal number 11. So we try to do this. So we try to look at power generation, energy management and energy efficient technology, energy efficiency in building and transportation sector, and efficiency in equipment and energy saving behaviors with sustainable development goals, different goals, indicators here. So what we did was, the guiding principle was to, focus on conservation of rivers and wetlands. It has a lot of, river system, a water system is very important in that particular climatic zone. And productive agricultural land, it's almost like 80% of the land is agriculture, and there's a multicultural community that exists. So we went for inclusive development and development of sustainable land use, transport and other infrastructure, and we focused on local economic development from tourism and also energy efficient land use and built form. So we use this limit to growth model for this planning this city. So this has a, a definite population that we propose, and the food sufficiency and the industrialization tourism industry, and also, this is all based on carrying capacity that we've worked out. And there are certain, mixed land uses that we have proposed. So a snapshot is shown here how this sustainability elements are integrated with this. So what we did was, the land use plan was done based on compact city concept. So it has 800 meter. It is basically, transit oriented development that we have followed. So you can see on that on this yellow thing, that's agricultural land, and the settlement along the road. We're trying to capitalize on the trend, because Nepal has this trend of building along the road. So we try to capitalize it. So we basically, propose transit oriented development with transit in every 800 meters. So what we were trying to do here was, like, we're trying to limit the growth of this particular place, and trying to regionalize the urbanization present in the larger region around Lumbini here. So if you look at here, you could see, greenfield development zone, mixed land use zone, ecological corridor development zone, because it's very sensitive from ecological perspective, birds life, aquatic life, and agriculture development zone. And also the square in the middle is the World Heritage Site, birthplace of Buddha here. So, and we also, this shows you the basic, mass transit. This is a mass transit road network that we have proposed here, and the market centers. And if you see in those green buttons, you will find that those are smart villages, because it also has a very traditional villages of Muslims and Hindus, as well as, not Buddhists, Muslim and Hindus. So we were proposing. So, and then, we went for, like, mixed use development, focusing on walkability, non-motorized transport, and then urban development for maximizing, so basically here what we're trying to do was, we're trying to look at a form which could have a, very, which could be integrated with the main World Heritage Site, maintaining visual integrity, and also containing development to certain, development zones here. And we also...
Professor Upreti, another few seconds, and then you reach 15 minutes.
Sure, I'm just about to finish it. So we went for, this, we made a grid plan of this particular thing, and we also, tried to work on a local level. And if you see this particular detailing out here, we try to include the air into the, whole land planning itself. So we were, like, looking at the wind direction, so that, humidity can be taken care of when you actually, go for built form development here. So this is an existing settlement, and we're also looking at, at the settlement views and the existing, this is an ecological zone, the green thing that you can see, a river system. And we're also, looking at this, block level here. And we're also looking at how, this wind can be actually, integrated to those arrows are, the wind that we're trying to, bring into the settlement level, so that humidity can be taken care of. And we also try to, make analysis of this, traditional building system. And we try to look at the energy saving potential and energy response, energy efficiency. And you will be surprised to know that this traditional building actually respond to, climatic conditions here. And we made certain, we also trying to look at, energy efficiency in building layouts. So last slides, what I want to tell you is like, in sustainable, when we say smart city, being, becoming smart is like, being able to use available resources efficiently, and with the use of ICT, taking, with the use of ICT, you can take informed decision to govern, like, let's say, urban area. So in our context, we are basically, we have basic cities now. We don't even have a city. There are so many things that needs to be built now. So what we were telling, what I was arguing was like, we can create a basic city based on sustainable development principles. And in basic city, we can use certain level of, we can integrate certain level of ICT, information communication technology. For example, the numbering system, the digital-based numbering system, digital-based, land information system, so that it can be linked with municipal, revenue, one source revenue. And then, once we have a fully functioning city based on sustainable principles, then we can actually, think of using advanced, digital technology like Internet of Things and those things, and then, make it, achieve that, goal of making it smart. So basically, if you look at here, if you look at the degree of ICT use, it is thinner here, it is bit thicker here, and ultimately, once we are prepared, once the whole population has the e-readiness ready for, this digital thing, then we can actually achieve this thing. So with that note, I would like to conclude here, and I would like to thank Professor Paulo for giving me this time, and I thank everyone for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Upreti. Now it is my turn, so I no need to. No, sorry. Now it is the turn of Professor. No, first me, and after Professor Zampon, because he is busy with another meeting. So please let me start. I share my screen. Wait a second, please. Okay, can you see my screen? I heard my voice. What's wrong? What happened? Okay. Anyway, let's try this way. Now, my presentation is not directly concerned China, but it is a general discussion about the eco-district and eco-life, which is the research that I did in several years in the past. So this is my who I am, a very short presentation. I'm Italian, but I teach in School of Architecture of Tianjin University. I'm the Deputy Director of the International Exchange Office and the director of a very small lab, which is called Bionic Architecture and Planning. My work, it is related on teaching the bachelor degree, master, and PhD. So I'm very honored to work in China in Tianjin University. So first, a brief introduction about what is the idea, the key footstep in the ecological life. Of course, the Kyoto Conference, which is one of the key elements in the past. Then in 2007, the Washington Declaration, the G8 summit also in 2007, and then a very simple list about some key milestone in the discussion, official discussion about the eco-life in a global perspective. So basically, every year there is, or almost every year there is a very important meeting on this topic. One of the most important probably is the Paris Agreement. But then even in 2017 and 2018, there are in 2019 there are very important milestone in the ecological life, in the ecological strategy in the world. So a key issue of the ecological life. Eco-life, of course, we have to remember that it is a comprehensive strategy. It is something which is not related only on simple technology, but we have to remember that the human being is the key point and probably also the weakness of this sustainable life. I strongly recommend the professors, students, and experts to always take the consideration about the eco-life, about the geopolitical point of view. Without the geopolitics, we cannot understand very clear the great strategy around the world. In my strong opinion is that one of the most powerful elements in the ecological life strategy, it is the multi-scale approach, which is one of the key topics of my research, which is operate according with the local environment. The local environment, it means economy, culture, local habit, whatever. What it concerns the local situation is a sort of deep understanding of the local condition and then react accordingly. And then confidentially what we call the post-production management. Yes, because in many cases there are very good projects, but then it is simply dropped down. Once the project it is created, then there is no anything which is related on the management. What happened after? Another very important point, it is the recently we are discussing also in Tianjin University about the, what is the best strategy for the future. We already agree that the green building, green city, sustainable city, it is very important, but it's not enough. It is not enough, so the standards have to be higher for the future. And one of the key elements, it is what we call, it is called zero carbon city or zero emission city, but even more, and this is, I think, the challenge for the future, the energy plus building or energy plus cities. I am strongly, I'm not very sure, or actually, I know the problem to discuss about the zero emission city, the green city, and so on. So probably what we have to discuss is to be a little bit more realistic. Personally speaking, I don't believe very much in the green city as an effective strategy. And I even believe less in the zero emission, zero carbon city. It is a goal, it is a dream, but in fact, it cannot be reached. How, for example, we can provide water for 30 million of people in Chongqing, or 25 million in Beijing, or even 300 million for Jinjinji. It is very difficult. But it is also true that it is possible to consider cities in a more sustainable way. So according with my understanding of this difficult problem, it is very important to consider how to change the existing city in I write a green city. Actually, I think in a city which is more green, more sustainable. In this perspective, we have to consider always a regional and local transportation. Transportation is a key element, is a key point. Better to have a green transportation or something similar, and especially have a smart node. I will give you an example of smart node. Governance is the point. Governance is a very important element in all those kind of strategy. European Union is doing a very interesting policy. There are until now 40 concrete initiatives which is running, which is going to be created very soon. And definitely Europe is working in the direction to reduce the dependency of imported oil, cut the carbon emission, until by 60% by 2050. So there are very strong policy. This is a typical of European Union, but also in China there is something very interesting is going to happen. Non-conventionally full cars in the cities. European Union is going to reduce 40% of the use of sustainable low carbon fuel. And at least they have to reach 40% in shipping emission, cutting the shipping emission, 50% shift of medium distance intercity passenger, which it means rethink radically the transportation inside the Europe. And in general, the goal is to 60% cut the transportation emission. I don't want to go into the detail too much, but there are some milestones in the European policy, something like by 2050, reduce everything have to be converted into the rail transportation. by 2030, 30% of road have to be reduced by 2030, 30% of road framed over 300 kilometers should shift by other modes, so no more car, basically. Then by 2050, connect all the core network airports by high-speed train and so on, and especially create European multimodal transportation information, management and payment. This one make the European Union stronger and reduce radically the emission. There are other policies we don't have enough time to consider. What it is very important is the tax policy. Create a very new policy for taxation for support hybrid vehicle, and implement the cycling line, bike sharing, and especially free public transportation system. One important policy that I don't want to discuss in this presentation, but it is a part of my research. It is one very interesting policy which is going to be applied in some country of free ticketing, which it means in a certain city there are the policy to have a zero cost for ticketing. So the people can use the public transportation without pay. This is a very strong policy, and I strongly support this idea. Then, very important topic in my personal opinion, it is the theoretical concept which come from mathematics, but I strongly believe it can be used also in the green city, which is the multi-layer and smart node theory. In this case, the territory, it is divided in at least 7 different layers: local level, district level, city level, bioregional level, regional, national, and international level. Now, these 7 layers, it is a sort of logic map. And all the different layers are connected each other by smart node. So in theory, and this is the case, for example, of Germany, in Germany it works very well, but also Sweden, it works quite well. It is very possible to connect 2 different cities, which it means national level, with the local level. So in theory, with my own bicycle, I can take my own bicycle from my home, ride the bicycle to the train station. I can take my bicycle on the train, and then after the regional transportation, I arrive in another city and I can reach my office still with my bicycle. This one can be generated by a series of smart nodes, which is quite interesting policy in my personal point of view. How the smart node could work? Well, the best example that I have in my mind, it is one station in Berlin, in Germany. And this is the scheme. It is a very complicated project. It concerns one big node. It is one of the major railway in Berlin. It connects the national level railway transportation system with shops, bus station, car parking, even a cinema, everything in one big node. And this is very interesting because thanks of this node, with the national railway system, I can simply drop down my bicycle and reach everywhere in the city thanks of this system. Now, eco-city and eco-district. I repeat again that eco-city is a controversial topic in my personal opinion. I don't believe in eco-city, but I believe in eco-district. So an eco-district or a green district, as you want to call, it is a district with a different function. For example, residential, for example, office building, it doesn't matter, with a radical reduction of non-renewable energy use. So it is even possible to consider an eco-district self-sufficient in terms of food and energy provisioning. We have all the technology for recycle the water to produce the food and so on. And then this district can be completely independent by the rest of the bioregion, only using the self-production of energy, food, and recycling of the waste. One case is a Vauban Eco District in Germany, which is composed of a very interesting transportation system divided in three different levels: pedestrian, local transportation, and city transportation. And these are three different levels. It is not overlapped each other. Another very important case, and this is probably one of the major cases in the world, it is Hammaraby Lake City in Sweden, in Stockholm. It is one of the most sophisticated eco-districts in the world. I visited and it worked really very well. It is a very sophisticated system of recycling of the water, collecting of the waste, energy provisioning, and so on. It is very remarkable, and I warmly recommend to study. In other case, it is a Vaxio City. Now, Vaxio City, it is a real case of eco-district and eco-city. It is a very small city, but not very small. It is 83,000 inhabitants, but for China is a small size settlement. And it is one of the most green and sustainable city in the world. And the interesting thing is the technology are very simple. So I strongly recommend the idea, don't trust the high tech, because sometimes the low tech, or better, the middle tech could work very well. Another case is Aarhus in Denmark. Also in this case, the energy provisioning, it is self-sufficient. Because the heating system, for example, it is covered by 95% by the local self-production system of heating, and in 2015 it reached 100%. Sorry. Then I only want to mention, because the time is run fast, the multi-scale approach. The multi-scale approach, it is basically based on two big strategies. First of all, global local. Act locally, but concern the global strategy of the world. So we need to understand what happened at the global level, but then finally adapt the global strategy into the local level. And then multi-scale approach, it also means multi-level approach, which is generate appropriate strategy to intervene at the local level, according with the local economy, local habit, local architecture, local possibility, and especially self-sufficient. So this kind of multi-level approach, it is very important for the eco-district strategy. So if we are in a very rich and very high-level context, definitely the technology could be very high. Otherwise, it is not very possible. This is some scheme that illustrate the idea of eco-village and eco-district in a global view. Then I only want to mention, because I don't have time, the idea of circular economy. I think circular economy nowadays, it is a fundamental strategy to be approached in terms of eco-district and eco-village in general. I don't have time. Important are the technology. This is some possible technology that we have to use for generate an eco-district. Some possible categories to be considered in terms of green building and green district evaluation. And then some of my personal work. First of all, a book that is going to be editing right now, which concerns eco-village and eco-district. This is, if you want to take the screenshot, it will be published very soon in English. And this is a book in Chinese, which is published at the end of this year or next year, which is Eco-City and Eco-Life. This is a quite important book because it's very big. It's a condensation of the research of many years. This is some of our practical job at the level of eco-district and eco-village in China. We did some work for the project of eco-village, eco-district in terms of low-scale approach. This is some prize that was awarded in China. And then this is our my final slide with our Weixin code. So please follow us if you like. Thank you very much to listen my presentation. Now I think this is my presentation. I ask Professor Zeng Peng if he is online to share his screen and he can start his presentation. Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, I'm Zeng Peng from Tianjin University. Many thanks for Professor Paulo to invite me to join the webinar. It is my pleasure to see all the professors online. The topic of my research is rural spatial network and revitalization paths in Beijing, Tianjin, Hebei region. The topic of the webinar is sustainable solutions for cities, but what I am going to talk is more about the rural space. I think which is a little bit far from the topic, but I think the relationship between urban and rural is very tight and cannot be separated, especially under the rapid urbanization process for China. Anyway, I will present you know, the rural revitalization is the national strategy of China nowadays, and Beijing, Tianjin, Hebei region is very important urban agglomeration along the east coast of China, and same as the Yangtze River Delta and the Pearl River Delta. So this research is trying to find a way to realize rural revitalization in this area. So the presentation will cover the following 4 parts. The first part is background. As all of us know, with 30 years, the rapid developments of economy and society, China has entered a new area, providing a new historical orientation for future development. Social change lead to the changes of urban and rural planning area. There are 2 important changes, including spatial planning and urban and rural, the relationship between the urban and the rural space. The idea of spatial planning started with the construction of ecological civilization. In March of 2018, the central government announced the establishment of the Ministry of Natural Resources, which declared spatial planning will replace 2 kinds of overall planning. One is urban and rural overall planning. The other is land use overall planning. In the future, they are replaced by spatial planning to form a unified, interconnected, and hierarchically managed planning system. The conception of development and conservation are combined in the spatial planning system. The planning system is divided into the 5 basic levels, from the state level, province level, to city, county, and township levels. And the main contents of spatial planning include national space evolution, and 3 zones and 3 lines delineation. The spatial planning is the conservation and the effective utilization of space resources from the perspective of region and based on existing condition and resources. Another important change is urban and rural relationship. Faced with the urban and rural gap, the government put forward the rural revitalization strategy aiming at realizing industry prosperity, ecological habitability, custom civilization, effective homes in rural area. The full revitalization in rural area will be achieved in the 3 stages. Okay. In China, under the administrative division, rural area is a spatial region system referring to all areas outside cities. The rural area has 2 administrative and management levels, including the towns and the villages. And based on the background, rural revitalization is to explore the revitalization paths above the construction of single village and consider the relationship among the city, town, village, thinking about the integration and utilization of rural spatial resources that is, rural revitalization should build bi-directional flow between urban and rural factors and organizing production, living ecology space called. This is part 2. The study area of the research is Beijing, Tianjin, Hebei region, and in this part, I will introduce the rural area developments in the region. Beijing, Tianjin, Hebei region is one of the 3 world-class urban agglomerations in China. Compared with other 2 urban agglomerations, Beijing, Tianjin, Hebei region has faced more serious imbalance between urban and rural development. The region is made up of 2 metropolitans and 13 cities with 218,000 square kilometers land and 110 million population, which is the largest and the most modernized region is Northern China. As for the rural area, there are about 56,000 villages and 39 million resident population. The urban-rural gap in the region is significant. For example, the income and consumption levels of rural residents are much lower than those of urban residents. The regional development is uneven, and the rural development in Hebei province is seriously behind that in Beijing and Tianjin. Is organized by production, living, ecology space. In terms of ecology space, the rural environment needs to be improved, and ecological protection is not coordinated, still staying at the environmental governance level of individual village. In terms of living space, the insufficiency of public services facilities make it difficult to form an effective supply. It is showing regional differences. The best area is around Beijing, but even there is also a problem of inadequate allocation of basic public services, such as health centers. In terms of production space, rural, industrial, and commercial development is slow, depending on the external resources. Based on the analysis of Beijing, Tianjin, Hebei rural area, this part puts forward the revitalization model for the region. To summarize the development difficulty of Jinjinji rural area, the construction focuses more on individual villages, lacking overall coordination and ignoring the comprehensive benefits of rural area. So the rural revitalization as a system, a network, should consider the construction above a single village. The research proposed a revitalization model based on the town level, taking down as a basic revitalization units. On the other hand, in the units, the rural resources, functions, and governance can be systematically organized. On the other hand, the rural area can create a broader connection with urban areas through the units. Then for the town units, the overall plan of production living ecology space is made with ecology space as the base to protect, repair, and integrate ecological elements, with living space as nodes to build a rural living circle and share the public services and infrastructure, with production space as connections to strengthen the link with rural industries. In this way, a network system is formed in town units, promoting the revitalization of the whole rural area. Next, I will introduce one specific planning about rural revitalization of Liujia-Paitang of Tianjin. This is the location of Liujia-Paitang in Baodi County. It is not so far away from the city center of Tianjin, and it has 20 administrative villages. Liujia-Paitang has favorable ecological conditions with a large area of natural ponds and forestry. In ecological space, to promote the ecological base, the plan proposed to improve the environment of the town and villages, creating a natural and comfortable landscape, and explore the multi-value of the ecology space, forming diversified ecological products. Based on the ecological resources, we try to develop the global travel system in the town area. In living space, the research evaluates the comprehensive scale of town and villages. We can see the town center is large in scale. Most villages are small in scale, and medium-sized villages are deficient. Based on the evaluation to improve the living nodes, the research proposed to form a system of 3 levels villages: the town center village, the normal center village, and the general villages. The central villages are equipped with public services facilities such as medical treatment, education, and some cultural services. And the general villages are equipped with basic public services, forming living circles covering the whole town area. In production space, the research calculates the connection relationship between the town and the villages by a gravity model. This is a network of production space system between each other. The east part is a weak area, need to be strengthened, you can see by some way. Based on the results of
I think his net has a problem.
Maybe have some connection problem. Yeah. Yes, because he's still sharing the screen, but the microphone doesn't work.
Mm.
I apologize for Professor Zampang, but I think I have the difficult task to control the time. So maybe we can pass to the session C, and we are connected with Italy, with the Polytechnic of Turin, one of the partners of our university. And the first speech is from Professor Roberto Giordano. So I ask maybe if Mr. Iteshpant can stop the sharing the screen, or eventually ask Roberto Giordano to share his screen. His topic, it is a nature-based solution, action for architecture's challenge. So Professor Giordano, are you online?
Okay, I can go on and can move on. Well, first of all, I would like to thank Paolo Vincenzo Genovese and Professor Hupreti for this opportunity. It's first time for us to join this kind of webinar, so we are honored for this invitation. Second, I think that for some aspects, it's interesting that my presentation and the following will be the third session expected within this webinar, since some aspects related to the topics I want to introduce you, and some other topics that will be then introduced by my colleague Lorenzo Savio have been already highlighted in some part of the previous presentation. Nature-based solution action for architecture's challenges is in fact one of the mentioned, for instance, the strategies or technologies, and for some aspects, even guidelines that can be assumed in different contexts if we want to design or develop eco-district. At the same time, can be also included within all those, let me say, technological devices, even if I'm talking about nature, I'm talking about plants, but that can be considered within, as I was saying, part of a smart city or sustainable city approach. So I am Roberto Giordano, as introduced by Paolo Vincenzo Genovese. I am also associate professor in building design at the Department of Architecture and Design of Polytechnic di Torino. The reason why I'm talking to you today about nature-based solution is because I have taken part to some researches in previous years on technological solution based on nature. In fact, at the end of my presentation, I will introduce you a specific research that we carried out in the period between 2010 2013, so just a few years ago. Basically, my presentation will be split up in two main parts. One, the shorter one, will be focused on some facts and as consequent to some challenges concerning a global issue that we have to face up properly. That is called, as you already and well know, climate change. The second part instead will be more focused on the so-called technologies, or even better, action that we can put into practice thanks to the use of nature-based solution. So, start together with facts and challenges. I would like to show you some data taken from the European State of the Climate portal. I took note about this portal because it's very important to highlight the most important information. The European State of Climate is an annual report compiled by Copernicus Climate Change Services. It's an European services, but actually provides several kinds of information at global, at worldwide level. It provides, in particular, an analysis of the monitoring for Europe and for other countries for the past calendar year, with the description, in particular, of climate condition and some related events, often disastrous events. In addition, it explores the associated fluctuation in key climate variables, and it provides also indicator from several parts of the Earth system. If my presentation works perfectly, I would like to show you a very short video concerning the climate change service in order to summarize the data. During the video that we have just seen, at least a couple of, let's say, environmental effects were mentioned. One is concerns the flows, one other instead concerning the temperatures rising. So it's something that we can also name it as urban heat island when we talk in particular about the city. So try to understand together something more about this, about this to affect. Well, what is very important concerning the flood is that this is probably the kind of natural disaster more related to the climate change. Usually we think a lot about the fact that climate change means a different kind of temperature at global level. Actually, it's not so. The kind of natural disaster that is more related to climate change, as a matter of fact, are flood. In fact, if we look at the number of disaster in terms of percentage that we have monitored at European level, but don't forget that when we talk about European level means that we are talking at global level, the kind of disaster in terms of percentage higher is due by floods. Floods are one very important challenge that we have to face up properly in the next decades. It's not only a matter of European country, it's not only a matter of Mediterranean areas, it's a matter of several kind of countries. Probably all those countries that are near the oceans, they are near to seas, and they have to find some solution to solve this kind of problem. If you want to have a look to some important facts and figures concerning floods, I suggest you to have a look at this interesting web portal titled Flood List. Every week, sometimes every day, we have information about disaster caused by floods. For instance, this picture was taken from yesterday news. If we look at the period between 1995 and 2015, we can see that flood disaster have affected 2.3 billion of people and killed almost 1,600 157,000 inhabitants. So it's a urgent matter to be solved. And we have to find proper solution, even at low tax solution, as mentioned before by Professor Paolo Vincenzo Genovese. Another aspect mentioned before was the urban heat island. Again, it's something that we know the kind of effect I'm talking about, since is a kind of effect caused by the city itself in combination with the rising temperatures. So the city, with all their impermeable surface, causes a sort of a constant increase level of the temperatures. That means that there is a relevant difference if we compare the temperature in the city with the temperature in a rural area or in suburban area as well. That is a kind of problem that we have, again, to handle properly at different kind of levels, starting with our, let's say, commitment as designers, as architects, as urban planners, and in general is a kind of issue of that several kind of municipalities at worldwide level have been trying to solve these days. This picture, again, is very interesting because provides us what usually happens in summer days, in a hot day in the city. We can see the surface temperature. If we look at the asphalt, if we look at the road, we can see that the temperature rises up 60 degrees Celsius, while the sky, that can be also assumed as a sort of thermal sink, has a lower temperature, approximately 20 degrees. And there is another important aspect to be highlighted within this picture. Another urban element that can provide us a sort of natural solution: the trees. The trees have a lower temperature, okay? 25 degrees, 30 degrees. In any case, a strong reduction of the temperature if compared with the asphalt and if compared to other kind of city surfaces. That can be, just looking at this picture, a possible solution in order to manage both the issues mentioned: the flows on the one hand, and on the one other, the urban heat island, both related to climate change. Before, I really appreciated what Paolo Vincenzo said when he mentioned the fact that we can act at different levels. We can act with high-tech technologies by introducing super mega devices in our cities, but at the same time, we can even act with low technology or medium technologies. Nature-based solution can be both. But I think that it's very important at this stage, being aware about the fact that we can work with what Jamie Lerner called urban acupuncture. In fact, during an interview in a video documentary edited in the 2008 entitled Last Call for Planet Earth, Jamie Lerner, that was mayor of the Curitiba city in Brazil, said something very, very interesting. If we plan for disaster, we will have disaster. And his solution, since it was a mayor of a city in Brazil that was not so rich at those times, was to work within very simple solution, but very effective solution. And I took inspiration thinking about my today presentation at his words. So what I would like to present you in the next slides are not super mega action such the smart forest city designed by Stefano Boeri architects. This is an impressive solution for Cancun in Mexico, but it's a kind of approach that can be, let's say, designed only in some specific occasions, okay, in some specific situation. As architects, as urban planners, as designers, we can do more, even if we can, let's say, exploit more simple or simpler solution that the one designed by Stefano Boeri architects. Nature-based solution can be so split up in simple solution, and they can be green roofs. They can be living wall system or green facades. They can be rain gardens. And finally, they can be green street or eventually permeable pavements. Let's have a look at some example. This, for instance, is a neighborhood in Amsterdam named Funenpark. And this is an interesting example of how green roofs can be integrated not only as a technological element within the building, but they can be part of the neighbor design itself. It's interesting, this picture taken from the roof of another surrounding building, because
Professor Giordano, I apologize, already 16 minutes. Thank you very much.
Okay. I'm going faster, sorry, really sorry for that. This is an example. This is another example taken instead from London that designed a hotspot in order to handle urban heat island effect and risk of floods. These again are rain gardens, very effective, very simple in order particularly to handle the floods effect. And finally, I'm going to permeable pavements and green street that, as you can see, can be a sort of replacement of asphalt in a redesign, even small and narrow spaces within the city. This is another example taken from Barcelona. I provided, again, some information about the mitigation given by nature-based solution. This is given by living wall system that was part of the research that we carried out, and I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation. You can take note if you are interested at the paper that was written, and look only at green lines. Look at the difference between the temperature of a normal, of a current cladding surface of the wall system and a green facade. It's important, the reduction of the temperature that we can get thanks to vegetation. Again, some benefits due to rain gardens: reduce obviously flooding, removes pollutants, replenish groundwater, and finally, it can be very interesting since it provides native plants and urban habitats for local wildlife. Some other important positive effects that are not directly related to floods and urban heat island are also the fact that the green vegetation can absorb particulate matters and volatile organic compounds. Here again, if you have time to take notes, you can read this interesting paper that focus on the capability of vegetation to absorb, in particular, some urban pollutants such as PM10. And again, there is another important positive effect due to vegetation, that's as a global improvement of building acoustic comfort. Just a few seconds to talk about the project we carried out some years ago. It was titled GREENS, Green Envelope System. It was a project aimed at designing, developing, and to building up a living wall system based on some ecological aspects, such as the modularity, the use of ecological materials. But what is now more important to highlight is the fact that the technologies that was developed was also monitored over a period of time between 2012 and 2015. So we have a lot of information and data concerning this living wall system. This was one of our installation in Turin, Venaria Reale, an amazing site just a few kilometers far from Turin. These are some pictures taken from the monitoring activities that we carried out over the period mentioned. So we monitored the temperature surface, and so this is the reason why I presented you before some data. This is what was carried out in terms of measurement of noise reduction in the reverberation chamber. And finally, we accounted also the positive CO2 balance given by the fact that designing and building up a wall with vegetation means also zero carbon.
Already 21 minutes.
sorry. That's also are some references that you can use, and here my mail address. If you are interested, you can contact me. I'm sorry, Paolo, really sorry.
No problem, it was so interesting. I am sorry to interrupt such a beautiful presentation, but unfortunately the time is always cruel. Thank you very much. Before to introduce Professor Lorenzo Savio, I need to apologize for Professor Zampon. he has some technical problem for join again the conversation, the webinar, and he greetings to all of you guys. Please, Professor Lorenzo Savio, to start. The last one, it is always probably the one who will be remembered. Thank you very much, Professor Lorenzo Savio. The panel is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm Lorenzo Savio. Can you hear me well? Okay.
Yes, perfectly. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm trying to share my desktop now. I work as a researcher at Polytechnic di Torino. I collaborate with Professor Giordano in many researches about natural-based solution for building, but today I'm going to present another topic concerning the vernacular and vernacular architecture refurbishment in rural development programs in Italy. In Europe, politics and funds for the development of rural areas are managed through programs which are coordinated at national levels, but which are implemented at the local scale by groups of small municipalities called local action groups, in Italian GAL. Those municipalities belong to the same homogeneous territorial unit, and as you see from the picture, France and Italy have a higher number of groups due to the complexity of their territories and of the urban areas characteristics. Those rural development programs aim at promoting an overall development strategy for rural areas, starting from the local assets, like, for example, agriculture, traditional food production, and tourism. Our research group of Department of Architecture and Design Politecnico di Torino supports some local municipalities and the Piedmont regions and the local action groups in implementing their activities concerning the enhancement, conservation and refurbishment of the vernacular and traditional architecture, which is always part of those overall development strategies, and which are considered key actions. As you see, in Piedmont, we have 14 groups, all in rural and mountain areas. And in each territory, we find a different kind of vernacular architecture. The white part you see in the map is the Pianura Padana area, a plain territory, which is the most urbanized area in Italy, with the city of Turin, the west part, Milan in the middle, and Venice in the east part. Vernacular architecture conservation and refurbishment is important not only because it represents our tradition, but also in a perspective of sustainable development of rural areas which in the second part of the 20th century were mostly abandoned for the not so sustainable development of the urban areas. So vernacular architecture represents all over the world, not only in Italy, an original concept of sustainable building with the use of local resources and with a specific attention to bioclimatic design. And recently, during the COVID emergency, in Italy, we are facing a period of economic crisis, but also we are assisting in some changes in the working models and in life habits. So smart working is becoming more and more reality in Italy, and maybe in the next future, more people will decide to combine the quality of life and the lower costs of the rural areas with the possibility of working without moving to the city. So the refurbishment of the existing heritage of the existing building stock is a topic of interest in this moment in Italy. In vernacular architecture refurbishment, the central issues for us as researchers is to combine and find a sort of compromise between adapting buildings to the current and actual requirements, but also preserving their traditional characteristics, which represents our culture and in which in some contexts became a real asset for the local development. Like, for example, in the UNESCO sites we have in Italy, UNESCO sites of the vineyard landscapes like Langhe in Piedmont, or for example Chianti in Tuscany. In our research and support activity to the local authorities, our interest is more to the common and simple constructions, because the monumental buildings in Italy are already protected by special regulation, but the most part of the diffuse heritage is not protected, and so we have a lot of simple traditional buildings which are important for the beauty and for the image of the traditional landscape, but which can be destroyed, refurbished, without taking care to their traditional characteristics. Our attention is also over small constructions and artifacts, not only residential buildings. So we can see some example of small buildings which are very important for the traditional landscape. Those are buildings for local agricultural activities, like, for example, the chestnuts collection and drying in wood areas, or for example for the production of cheese and for the aging of cheese in mountain areas, but also wells, public wells of the villages and public ovens of the villages. A specific activity we try to do is to assist the local authorities in the conservation of vernacular buildings with the adoption of guidelines for the vernacular building conservation. In each territory in Piedmont promoted in the local development programs an analysis of the local traditional architecture and the redaction of a manual guidelines with some regulation and instruction to find the correct compromise between modernization, adaptation, and conservation. Those guidelines provide real and very practical instructions which became parts of the municipal building regulation, so they are mandatory, explaining for each building typology or technological systems like the roof system in this example, which kind of interventions are admitted or not, and explaining the general criteria which the conservation and refurbishment project must follow in order to adapt buildings but not to lose the traditional characteristics. For a long time, the existing building refurbishment has been led just by the issue of energy saving, like it is the only one possible interpretation of the concept of sustainability. The problem is that we cannot convert a traditional building to passive house, of course, without changing them deeply, and so we have to find a sort of compromise in the intervention. With the sustainable development goals, we have a wider perspective of sustainability, which is not only a matter of energy saving, but also which takes into account also circular economy, reuse of elements, low environmental impact in building activities, reducing the use of new products, and also local development through, for example, the valorization of the traditional landscape, as I said. In those guidelines and manuals, I'm going to show you some very simple examples. We can find information about how to refurbish building and adapt them, for example, to improve the energy saving and the energy performance, finding a compromise, so without destroying them and change them. Of course, we have to move from a strong idea of passive house, energy efficient house, because we cannot reach, we can improve the behavior of the building, but we cannot reach, of course, the level of the passive house without, if we want to keep and preserve the buildings. So we can find the suggestions and the criteria, for example, about the integration of energy production systems, which can be done in a way which doesn't affect too much the image and the beauty of the landscape, the image of the buildings. So, for example, there are examples of bad or not so good integrations, and also practical references for the refurbishment. In this example, practical examples for the improving the quality, the energy performance of building envelope, in this case the roof, without keeping the original elements. So our focus in the small and minor constructions, as you see from the example. So, for example, all the interventions are described in a practical way. In this case, it is another example for the ventilation, for improving the indoor quality, the ventilation of the flooring systems, or, for example, to improve the quality of windows performance, thermal insulation, without change everything. So keep, in this case, the suggestion is keeping the original elements and trying to, for example, introduce another window system with a higher performance from the energy point of view. In our activities, we also collect a lot of examples, and many guidelines are deals also with the topic of the integration of modern elements, contemporary elements, sorry, in a traditional building, which is a very delicate topic, which we cannot manage. We can explain the general criteria, but it is impossible to give rules and instruction. So it is important that the architects and have a particular sensibility to this topic. And as you see from this last example, our attention is over simple constructions. In order to keep all the small elements which characterize the traditional rural landscape, because we really think that it can be a sustainable asset for those territories to find a slow way, but effective way to find a way for the development. I'm at the end of presentation. Thank you. The last thing I want to say is that those manuals are just tools. The most important thing is to create the culture, and also with our activity at the University of Education of the Future Architects and Builders, we can do a lot, improving their sensibility towards those topics. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your interesting presentation. We appreciate it very much, especially because you are the only one who is who speaks less than 15 minutes. So you are really.
I tried to stay in the time, so I'm sorry.
Very good. Very good. Very good.
Very fast.
Thank you. Okay, we have some question, and we thanks to all of you guys for being interested. One question is for Professor Roberto Giordano. And the question is, what is the urban acupuncture? What is some strategies to achieve this? This is from Mr. Navin S. Parajuli, if I pronounce it well. Mr. Giordano, please, your turn.
Okay, here I am. I will try to be shorter in my answer than in my presentation anyway. I already mentioned the fact that in by testing that acupuncture can be assumed as a sort of action in some specific spaces within the city, such as neglected spaces or unused spaces. Sometimes the kind of action that can be figured out or developed within the acupuncture approach is devoted on very small part of the cities. It's important to highlight within the acupuncture approach, bearing in mind that we have a sort of combination among the fact that we want to improve the environment of a not used or neglected space, even in order to reduce, for instance, some effects such the one I mentioned during my presentation. One other aspect is the fact that we have often a sort of co-participation in the design process. So it's not only a top-down approach, what we can see, but it is often a sort of bottom-up approach through, for instance, subsidiarity or other kind of participation processes. Urban tactic is a kind of process that often can be seen in this kind of interventions. And finally, there is also an economic aspect to be considered, since this kind of intervention, this kind of remodeling of the city shape are, again, often affordable, so they are not too much expensive. In my presentation, if you remember, I shown a picture of a narrow road in the outskirts of an American city. That can be assumed as an interesting example of urban acupuncture. So the road was not so important. The kind of intervention was simple. There was a participatory approach, thanks to the fact that some people, some citizens, acted together in order to remodeling, redesigning, and redefining the road pattern, and so on. That's very basically can be summarized. It is a sort of summary about the acupuncture, urban acupuncture.
Thank you very much. The second question is for me, Professor Upreti, from Mr. Chandra Prajapati. In your presentation, you have mentioned compact development as a strategy for smart city planning. What is the nature of compactness, in particular the specialty space of the compactness? Is there any preference, or if you have identified any kind of building typology to achieve compactness? Thank you very much, Professor Upreti.
Thank you, Paolo. Thank you, Chandra, for asking this question. Yes, I mean, when I say compact development means, you know, in Nepalese municipality, the sprawl and the kind of investments that you have to make to reach out to all the small village units is very huge, and government simply cannot afford it. And there is a tendency of people coming down to the market center if lands are available to them at an affordable cost. So when I say compact city, I mean to say creating services and service plots so that people could come to the city, I mean market area, so that, you know, infrastructure could be shared. But we have, in Lumbini Smart City Planning, we have gone one step forward to identify the compactness based on the study of village cluster. So in that, what we've done is we've proposed a mix of high density, low density, and mid-rise density. So we have three densities that were mixed together within the 800 meters by 800 meters grid. So that is a kind of mixed development that we have proposed, and we were not able to bring in the actual layouts of what traditionally people use spaces, but what we tried to do was we studied the traditional building in terms of its energy performance, and we found that these buildings were very responsive to the wind because of hot humid climate, and some of the the envelope design were very interesting for thermal comfort and indoor environment quality, and also the material they use. So we have identified those features, and we have used it in this mixed development. At least we have incorporated that thing into the building bylaws and regulations, so that future development can be integrated with that. So that's about what we've done in smart city in Lumbini. So the compactness means creating a more dense area so that infrastructure could be shared, and the development expenditure that goes into village. Because of the political competition, it so happens that even if you don't require a all-weather road going to the village, a green road could have been the solution. Because of the political competition, it does not happen. So there is a lot of wastage of investment. So we're trying to create more spaces around so that people are willing to come to the market areas, living rural areas for agriculture and keeping the low development intact. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lopreti. One question for me now from Mrs. Brenda Torres. What is the starting point to create an eco-city, and in which way the community can be involved? I will be very quick because we must concentrate the time. In fact, the point is, I don't believe so much in eco-city. Anyway, in the case of eco-city, I think the strategy, it is only top-down and government level. Because of the complexity is too high. Then a very strict regulation that everyone have to follow. That is the key point of eco-city. If we are discussing about the eco-district or eco-village, which I believe very much, in that case, I think the community participation, it is fundamental. And it is a very difficult process that we did in the past, because it is always concerning social participation. So the government administrator with some expert have to meet the local people and try to understand what they want, and especially try to guess what problem they have. Because very often, and this one happened, for example, in the case of poverty alleviation, the local people, they don't know what is the problem. They don't know they have problem, for example, for the quality of the life and so on. So my strongly believe, according with my experience, is we must understand where we are going to intervene. Eco-city, only top-down, and then education about the sustainability. In the case of village or district, the social participation have to be based on interview and work together hand by hand with the local people. This is a very quick my opinion, my experience. Then we have another question from Mr. Dimutu for Professor Giordano. How about the sustainability and success of those nature-based solutions for architecture challenge in Europe? Professor Giordano, only 3 minutes because there are also other questions for you.
Okay, very quickly. Well, if you have time to type or to text on your PC or Mac, you can just to add up just the combination nature-based solution and Europe, and you'll get a lot of information about all the policies that have been put into practice in recent times by the European Commissions. Europe recognizes the importance of this kind of strategies, technologies within the urban development. There are a lot of examples. One is very important to mention is the international project named Reinventing City, and all the cities, all the candidate cities that have taken part of this project all decided to exploit the opportunity related to nature-based solutions at different kind of levels, from urban forestry up to green roofs.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question for Professor Giordano. Again, you say that tree can be a solution for land surface heater problem. And by building design that you can show to us before is made some kind like eco park on the rooftop. Can you explain that the root of the plants does not damage the building structures in the future? From Mr. Giustiana Zacasa Sinaga.
Now, in this case, the answer is more related to the fact that we have to design properly a roof system. Okay, obviously we cannot figure out a roof just like a traditional roof with an addition of some plants above. We can have several kinds of technological opportunities with intensive green roof or semi-extensive or extensive green roofs. All this kind of solution can be designed according to some standards, such as ISO standards. So we have a lot of information, a lot of references to designing and after building up properly a green roof. We have just to use this kind of references and then follow this kind of regulation even in the construction stage.
Okay, thank you very much. Last question for this webinar from Ms. Hannah Harris. The action solution you have stated, the question is from Mr. Roberto Giordano. The action solution we have stated to counter to the climate change issue, specifically flooding and temperature increase, are green roof, living wall, rain garden, and so on. These are small-scale actions. My question is, how effective are those actions to counter the issues? Another question for Mr. Roberto. Flooding is caused by numerous factors. But it's stressed that the impermeable surface of the city is the main leading cause of flooding in the city. How about flooding that occurs in rural areas where those permeable soil, trees, etc. doesn't exist? However, the natural land couldn't cope with the huge amount of rainfall and discharge. In your opinion, what is the best solution for these cases?
Well, actually, there is not a huge difference between urban area and rural area in terms of environmental effects. What we can do, obviously, is to act according to several kind of characteristics. In urban area, we work mainly within a sort of situation that is given by the buildings, is given by the roads, is given by the asphalts, for instance, a typical urban matter. Obviously, at the in other contexts, such the one mentioned in the question, so we are talking about rural areas, the kind of technological solution can be different, but the kind of subject doesn't change. We can use, even in this case, vegetation. For instance, deforestation can be a proper solution in some area in order, for instance, to reduce all those potential natural disasters given by floods. Probably we can change the kind of technology to use urban forestry is something that can be assumed as different with a rural forestry. But if you can see my words, the kind of subject, the greens, the vegetation is always the same, is always the main answer. I think that in this case it's very important to act according to an interdisciplinary approach. So taking advantage of all those disciplines coming from geologism, coming from agronomy, coming from whatever, actually I don't know, that can be very helpful in some specific cases.
Okay, thank you very much. I think now it is the end of our webinar. And I want to thanks again Professor Upreti to organize this webinar with us, Professor Roberto Giordano to come to join us, and Mr. Architect Lorenzo Savio. It was a very exciting situation, especially at the beginning, because we have a severe technical problem, but Mr. Professor Upreti solved in a brilliant way everything. So thank you very much. We apologize for the technical problem, but really it is a problem of Zoom, not a problem of the organizer. So thank you very much to everyone, and I hope to see you again, and we will organize a new event for the future. Thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you,
Thank
Professor.
Thank you very much.
Professor Roberto.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Professor Lorenzo. Thank you for participating in the webinar. So with all of your permission, I wish to end this webinar now.
Thank you very much also to Mr. Hitesh Pant for organizing everything.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.